Welcome to Sunday Satsang. I welcome you with all my heart. You are my spiritual family. You know, to completely master all aspects of yourself takes a lot of time. Even after initial enlightenments, it takes years and years to unfold. And you have to find your way through all the various false elements of self before you can find the self in yourself. There are many layers of mind and of beingness. And it's hard to see through. That's why Ramana and others have methods like self-inquiry, to follow the I thought or to follow the I sensation. But these are effortful. And when you're making effort even to find the self, you leave the self. It's best even to drop the notion of self or enlightenment or freedom. Instead, you open yourself to yourself by being passive. I know most of us go through years and years of reading about spirituality, Ramana, Muktananda, all the other Anandas. And after a while, we know, shit, I know all about it, but I don't have it. What is this thing that they all are trying to expose us to? Well, it's very confusing because almost every teacher has a different end in mind, depending on where they are. But as a matter of practicality, if you could just stop seeking actively with the mind and instead, like Krishnamurti says, just observe. You lay back in your easy chair and you watch your mind. You watch your mind daydreaming. You watch your mind thinking about what's going to be for dinner. It just continually goes and goes and goes and goes. And after a while, you realize there are other things to watch besides the mind. But watch is an active word. It's better to say, be open to, be accepting of other sensations besides the mind. Be aware of your breathing, the rising and falling of your diaphragm, the expansion and contraction of your lungs, the feeling of your back against the back of the chair, your butt on the ground, your arms in the chair or in your lap. Be aware of your body. Try to sink into the body, your body. What does it feel like? What do your feet feel like? And watch when you feel your feet, how after a while they begin to tingle. You can spread your attention upwards to your calves and your thighs, your pelvis, and then back to your breathing. When you begin to be able to do this really, the mind more or less disappears. You've seen it for what it is. It's a useless chatterbox, and you no longer feel forced to follow it. You just watch everything. You become passive. Maybe you purr like Fred. Or maybe you purr in your own way. Just relax. Notice the tension in your neck and shoulders. Notice it in your arms and your hands, your chest, maybe your legs. Just relax. Accept everything that comes up. And you feel more subtle tension now. I feel it in my back, in my hands now. And now that I'm aware of it, it begins to relax. The more you can relax, the more open you are. You're open to the world and to yourself. And you may realize at this point that you have no idea who you are or what you are, because your mind is left behind. And you don't ask silly questions like, who am I? This is the Advaita way. Observation. But you'll note that this kind of observation, even though it's feeling the body, is very much eye-orientated, vision-oriented. And maybe if you continue this for a few years, you find out that all emotions have disappeared because you're an observer. And the next stage is to become a feeler. Here is where you make the transition to the body, from your mind, from your eyes into your body. Not merely observing it, but feeling it. You can both feel it and observe it. But when you make fully a transition into feeling, your body becomes very relaxed. I'll wait for it to stop ringing. Probably somebody trying to sell us solar panels for the roof or insurance for the car.
Mm-hmm.
Now the real tasks of surrender begin. It's not effortful, it's letting go. Letting the body be, letting the world be, and just feeling everything. And you get a new appreciation for feeling. The touch of the chair or the couch or the floor against your body. The more you do this, the more you relax. Even if you feel exhaustion, it's not an unpleasant sensation. Even if exhaustion grips your body, you accept it. And you sink more and more into feeling. Feeling. So there are 3 steps. One is observing, especially observing the mind, and observing the body, and then transitioning to feeling. This is a step beyond Advaita. This is a step into Tantra, where you use feeling as a guide to find yourself. I say this 1,000,000 times, but I saw it again in Facebook this morning. One teacher was saying, how do you abide in the self? It's a good question. You can't abide in the self knowingly until you know what the self is. And how do you know what the self is? Just by reading books. Because that's all in the mind. That's all ideas. The self is the unchanging one. The self is the observer. The self is the witness beyond existence. The self is the light of consciousness. All kinds of things are said about the self. But that doesn't help you find the self. You can only find yourself by relaxing more and more into the depths of your being. Into what Robert called the gap between thoughts or consciousness as it's first observed when you wake up in the morning before any words come. That's pure beingness without the pollution of words or concepts or emotions. And when you can rest in beingness, the emotions that do come are trivial. just another thing floating around in your field of consciousness. By now, you've totally transcended the mind. And if you're relaxing in the right way, without too much effort, but just letting go, you begin to feel happier and happier. Now, you can't really understand this until you can do this. Robert used to say this all the time. Just be still. He should have said, just relax. Keep relaxing deeper and deeper. The self is very, very hard to find. The real self. The false self, the one that Advaita talks about all the time, which is concepts about ourself, ideas about ourself, is relatively easy to transcend. You see that words and the word I are empty. The word I is permanent. But where do you find any permanence inside yourself? The word share is permanent. But where do you find any permanent share in reality? It's just a concept. Now there is the conceptual I, which disappears when you realize that the I points to an empty set. Just like the phrase, the present king of France points to no one. It's just an idea. The word I points to nothing, just emptiness. A vast emptiness that pervades everything and pervades everywhere, pervades the body too. And then you may identify with emptiness for a while. That's me, emptiness. And you may stay in emptiness for a long time, trapped in emptiness. Like most Buddhists, most Advaitins. But you can get lonely in emptiness because there's no emotions there. It's quiet, but in a sense it's dead. It doesn't feel dull and dead, it just feels empty. And after 5 or 6 or 10 years of emptiness, you know that something's missing. Something is missing. For me, it was the feeling of love. In Zen, there was no love. Sasaki Roshi told me that one time. There's no love in Zen. There's no room for love in Zen. Same with Buddhism mostly. They don't deal with feelings. They ignore them completely as vasanas or as impediments to be overcome to attain the quietness of nirvana. But maybe after a while, that quietness is not enough. You start looking in the world or in yourself for something new, something with energy. And if you're lucky, you find a way out. Maybe it's love. You fall in love with someone. Or else you have an inspiration of some sort to do something for others. Suddenly you're excited. You've got a glimpse back into the world of people, of objects. And if it's love, you're very lucky, because you come out of emptiness and there's nothing else in your world but that love. It overshadows everything. When love comes this way, where there's nothing else in your world except your love and your lover, whomever you love, it's single-minded. It takes over your entire being. Whether it's a love for a person or for a cat, for a truth, it's love. Just love. And the love grows, becomes electric, fills your being with energy. Suddenly that emptiness that you were comes alive with love and light. And when you love long enough and strongly enough and feel a devotion, need to surrender to your beloved, something can happen. As Nisargadatta says, beingness is pleased. Pleased by your efforts, by your quietness, by your love. And then shows itself to you in a wondrous explosion of devotion, light, and energy that shatters everything. You are confronted and faced by a force and light and power you've never conceived of before, totally beyond you. You're exposed to the grandeur of God within. I use those terms lightly, though. Terms like God have so many different meanings. This is a God without a name, without a label, just unending power, unending love, unending light that explodes you, lifts you up, explodes your mind away. You're just sitting in wonder, exploding energy, wonder. Until you come back a few hours later, or a few minutes later, and you're sleeping at your desk in a math class in the 4th grade or 5th grade, whatever grade Robert was in. Well, he'd have to be in middle school. And everything's changed. Your whole life has changed. You no longer know who you are or what you are. There's no words for what you are, what you've become. Even though you were always this, you just didn't know it. You're a roaring, walking, running, spinning dervish of power, of light, of love, devotion. And this explodes on and on for days, weeks, months, until you get used to it. Your body is filled with power. You feel like you could move the world. The light of consciousness absorbs you totally. You can't keep your eyes off of it. The self is finally felt within as yourself. It's so hard to describe. There's no words for it. The feeling of being totally at home in your body, but not as your body, but as the body is observed and the observer of the body. You have become the observer of the body. And in becoming the observer, you know what the self is. I am that. And you can feel it inside of you that it's this knowledge of who you are that permeates you. Here, there's infinite quiet. But at the same time, there's the explosion of the energies within you constantly. Shakti. Shakti pours out of your hands and arms and face and heart into the world. It's like you're the center of the universe. It's finally being at home. No more depression. No more hatred. No more anger. Just awesomeness. You're awestruck by yourself. And then you can understand how you can worship yourself. It's not a separate self that worships the self, but the self worships itself. There are not two. There's only one. The worshiping is feeling the ever-flowing energy from the self, from the life force, flowing out of the gut and the heart, constantly changing, swirling. Mindless, gentle yet powerful, and ever increasing flowing of the life force from within you, from your gut, from your heart. And you become lost in this flow of energies. Gradually, over a long period of time, these energies calm down. They're no longer all absorbing, but you're always aware of the self within. Maybe you have to sit like 20 years, like Ramana did, on a cave floor, absorbed in the self. Or maybe your way is to come back into the world more quickly. When Ramana came back, he couldn't say anything about what he experienced, except that he could never lose sight of it after he found it in himself, that it was dynamic, ever moving, unfolding, fascinating, could not take his eyes or his attention off of it, because it's both visual and tactile. The self is light, but it's also the feeling of beingness in the center of the body. But it's not the body, it's the awareness of the body. So what is it that's aware? You are aware. You are. It's all about you. You've searched all over the earth into 10,000 books, 53 teachers, 418 workshops. And finally, you meet yourself. And you're not disappointed. For it surpasses anything you've ever experienced before in your life by a factor of 100. Daily, you can feel the bliss of the self. But the bliss begins to fade after a few years too. It calms down. And now the emptiness is back. But the emptiness is filled with light, with dancing energies, with the feeling of the body mixing in. And you can't really distinguish body from energies, or your body and the world from each other. They flow together, inseparable. Then you can begin to say stupid things like the world doesn't exist or I am the world. All of these things are temporary statements about a temporary feeling. And then other people begin to believe it, and they try to get that experience for themselves, but don't know how to get that experience for themselves. But all you have to do is keep relaxing and feeling, relaxing and feeling. And I'm sure that for each of you, a love object will appear, whether it be a human or an animal or a tree, so that you can change from observing to worship, to love, into feeling. Ralph, can we have about 10 minutes of chanting?